Well, hello, that's me again. Today is September 22nd. It is Sunday, so it's the end of the weekend. For me, it's still morning. For some people, it's evening. So, well, happy end of the weekend if you wish. So, and there is some things which kind of accumulated over the last week, which have to be discussed and which have to be conveyed to you if you wish, in order to give you a kind of broader picture of what is going on. And believe me, a lot is going on. And fact is, if I will be sitting here for 30 minutes and try to cover all of it and give you some kind of the input, I will probably end up doing just one or two events. So, but there are other things which need to be addressed. But we will start with the issue of the, which I will return to it in a minute, actually. Before we go, my friends, they texted me. My friends who are former retired, very high-ranking U.S. officers, armed forces, and they said, "Well, Milley never graduated U.S. Military Academy in West Point, if you don't know this, but he graduated at Princeton with degree in politics." So, and that will basically shed some serious light on what we have in terms of the whole top brass of the U.S. Army, which parade themselves constantly as amateurs, which in many respects they are. They know how to run things from the logistical point of view, probably under the ideal conditions, but they don't know what war is. They never experienced it. So, and we'll talk about this. But let's start with some sit-rep from the front lines, and we will start with this. As you already saw in the beginning, this is Russian, the video fragment. It was about Russians blowing up one of the kind of bridges they tried to build, the armed forces of Ukraine in the Kursk area, and yeah, it's complete slaughter there. So now we have the situation for the 21st, yesterday. As you can see yourself, they tried again massive attacks by drones. 177 drones have been shot down. So, and as you can see yourself, military personnel, as I already many times on the record, count is as killed, 2,400 a day. So there's 14 tanks and APCs and infantry fighting vehicles, 39 armored vehicles. So when you add this 100 something, 113 of the all kinds of the vehicles which have been annihilated. And what can I say? Now we have even good old Abrams. Yeah, look at this. So this is the new reality for the Abrams tanks in the special military operations zone, because obviously they are not survivable on the modern battlefield. And fact is, even this contraption, which Russians also use, it called mangal, after their basically barbecue, grill, but which you grill your meats on the skewers. It's called, that's why it's called mangal. It helps, but again, if you have the drone fly in between the, basically, where the turret meets the main body, so it's not gonna help. And it's not gonna help, obviously, against the 125 millimeter shells from Russian tanks. But it is what it is. You do what you have to do. So now we have the situation with Nevelskoye. This is our good friend Marat Khairulin doing this. And as you can see yourself, there is now a serious situation there, especially when you take a look at this, red line, the shade. As you can see yourself, it's called the line of the combat contact, as it was on the 13th of September. Now, if you can take a look attentively at all that, you will see yourself that actually Russians are moving in the area of Pokrovsk and even in the front line. You see yourself the things now which are the blue ones, they are much deeper into the what is called Sukurina, and yeah, the Gornyak, which is Russians already took some key points there. So the cauldron there in Nevelskoye is closed now, and If you look even further, we have the situation with Toretsk, as you can see yourself. Also, the line moves constantly, inexorably, and this is for yesterday. And what is important about this whole basically Pokrovsk bulge, if you wish? Again, it is the operational art 101, and as I already stated many times, you take a look at Russian operations and historic operations, they will even up the front line. And then once it's even up, the Pokrovsk, also known as the Russian name Krasnoarmeysk, will be taken. And here is a very interesting situation. And again, it's so much, so to speak, unseen, invisible lines, so to speak, invisible connections, what is happening all over the world with all what is happening now on the front lines in former Ukraine, so that, well, let's take a look without further ado. For example, we have Mr. Zelensky, and this is from the yesterday Washington Post. Obviously, again, I cannot stop smiling and laughing ironically, if not sarcastically, if not sardonically, at the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness. This is one of the most important outlets which made everything sure that democracy or whatever was passing for it in the United States is dead now. But look at this. Zelensky to appeal to Biden's legacy in plea to lift Ukraine weapon limits. Okay, sure, yeah. President Joe Biden's sense of legacy, he will appeal to him then, and as he pitches his new victory plan to achieve a just peace in Ukraine, he told journalists ahead of this trip to the United States. Well, I mean, you have to understand many times, as I already speak about it, I stress this, average American journal loves, war criminals, and that they just applaud them. You can take a look at how they cover the situation, for example, in the Middle East, and of course, the more Russians are killed, the better. But here is the a very interesting situation in terms of how the situation in Pokrovsk develops, this bulge, And here we have those admissions. They need to squeeze those admissions because obviously you cannot lie anymore. Propaganda has to at least correspond to some sense of reality on the ground. But United States doesn't even do propaganda properly. It just lies outright and call it propaganda. I don't know why those people who attend all those strategic communications courses even considered to be professionals. They are amateurs, they're nincompoops, but here it is. And so in continuation of this article in Washington Post, they admit yesterday a tank unit commander in Ukraine's 68th Brigade who spoke on the conditions that he be identified only by his call sign, physicist, said that the stretch of the Pokrovsk front has somewhat stabilized in recent weeks because Russians are moving to the north and to the south of him. Absolutely. Take a look at the Berlin, offensive operation, of course, much larger in scale. Exactly what the same movements, and, this is operational art 101. But then he makes this startling admission. But while Pokrovsk remains in Ukraine control, as a logistic hub, it can already be said to have been lost, he said. Russian forces have succeeded in cutting off 3 major roads by destroying bridges or advancing close enough to control movement with artillery and drone attacks. Exactly. And this is, again, as I already stated, you can take a look at the maps of the Berlin offensive operation and practically what Russians do all the time, even including from Stalingrad to Kursk battle, where they defeated the Operation Citadel and a bunch of other smaller operations on the fronts of the World War II. It's always like that. You even the front, you defend your flanks. And this is exactly what we are observing. And Pokrovsk, exactly, it's isolated now. It's just a matter of time to, when it's gonna fall, because why would Russians push more its own people to be killed, own soldiers, when you can do it essentially this way? Russia has all the time in the world to do that. And here, which brings us to this situation, which, my dear friend, Larry Johnson discussed with Colonel Daniel Davis, interviewing none other than retired General Ben Hodges. And Larry's actually title is very telling, because it is. He cannot grasp reality. This is, as I already stated, my proposition, of which I am, stressing it for a long time now, that actually all those American generals, they are simply not competent militarily. They never fought anything like this. They do not understand it. They lost all their wars to the supremely inferior opponents. And here's Daniel Davis. He basically wipes the floor with Ben Hodges. And again, these are the main wisdom of the army always is, in case of the United States Army, always is with the middle level officers. It is the middle level, which are those, majors, lieutenant colonels, brigadier generals, who deal with their reality. This guy, Ben Hodges, is pathetic. I mean, he will not pass, as most of the U.S. generals, they will not pass entrance exams to the, for example, Russian Academy of the General Staff, because they will be, and I am not exaggerating, this is not embellishment, they will be laughed at with their military expertise, and especially knowledge of the history. But that's why, for example, Mr. Ben Hodges calls Russians animals. Well, it's typical dehumanization of the opponent. It's also the admission of own inferiority. So you have this combination, the clash of the exceptionalism BS, which was pumped through their asses in their brains, that they are the best fighting force ever, which they are not even close. And then suddenly you look at the situation with the special military operation, and they hurt, or rather but hurt, being the sore losers, because they have zero record of anything successful or sophisticated in terms of the scale and scope of operations they ever conducted. They won't be even able to plan them. And so they call Russians animals. Yeah, the same as Mr. Clapper, that used to be the, intel big honcho in the United States. He called Russians, genetically essentially inferior. So there you go. This is the type of people who would never win a thing, apart from the fact that, as I already stated, the military education in the United States and in NATO in general is absolutely inadequate. It's just, it's below several ranks of the ladder, as it is done in Russia, and it always was. So, and there you go. So Mr. Hodges called Russians animals because precisely they are winning things. And then we have the sappy sentimental garbage from Mr. Ignatius, who also talks Ukraine is bleeding out. It cannot fight forever. Of course it cannot fight forever. And that was the whole idea. And this is not about Ukraine. Ukraine is, in and of itself, is the virtual state, as its virtual armed forces, which are supplied by NATO, with NATO planning operations and, basically, pointing them into the directions they think they can win. They cannot. And so here it is, this David Ignatius, who wouldn't understand the difference between operational and tactical, talks about that the terrible cost of Russians' continuing assault on Ukraine is viscerally clear at a military rehabilitation center. And then, of course, he writes on so many pages all these sappy sentimental stories about Ukrainian soldiers who also well-known now commit incredible war crimes, from rape, robbery, torture, and things of this nature. But as I already stated, average American journal, he applauds war crimes, and, they are war criminals, many of them by default, because they are the ones who, continue to inspire all those, top political brass in Washington to believe that, they can still somehow can kill more Russians. Well, they can, probably, so there you go. And of course, the question is now, he is talking about now the rubric support of administration and these baloney slogans, as long as it takes. But in reality, he talks about that it needs to escalate. How, take Mr. Ignatius to even basic first year tactical course on the any military academy, which teaches actual military history and military sciences. And he will have to basically somehow say that strong enough to reach a decent settlement to escalate. How can Ukraine and United States and NATO in general escalate? They can escalate only by killing more civilians, raping them, torturing them. This is what they do really well. They can try to attack the nuclear power station, and that's about it. And to understand what kind of people we are dealing with, of course, we have to take a look at Spectator, which provided us with this. Oh my goodness, it's just absolutely incredible. This is Mr. Boris Johnson, the guy who is a proud exhibit A of the degeneracy of the United Kingdom elites, and those butthurt nincompoops in London who still think that they matter. They don't. United Kingdom, as I already stated, is chihuahua economically and militarily, but look at this. And he talks about it's time to let Ukraine join NATO. Yesterday, Bojo, the guy who was the messenger carrier and the guy who killed essentially Istanbul arrangements. And so he talks that the difference was that Vladimir Putin carnage had been inflicted on a new group of Ukrainians, noticeably younger last year's victims, and now including a woman. Well, so a woman? Well, Mr. Bojo has to ask what is the UK mark on the special military operation. Apart from the amateur planning, because they are amateurs there, they mostly those people and those volunteers, quote unquote, they have been noted also doing the raping, robbing, and just killing Russians, because they hate Russian gods. And that is why he continues to come up with absolutely mind-boggling idiocy, sheer idiocy. And so he writes about that. What more can these people got to do to show the rest of us their fighting spirit and their ability to win? Sure, this fighting spirit is primarily with the better troops, including those, guys from UK, United States, Poland, France, who shoot at their backs if they try to retreat or surrender. But he talks about the audacity of their launch out onto Russian land, taking more than 500 square miles and 100 villages. So again, as I already stated, this is the type of the garbage which Oxford produces. Again, the intellectual level, or rather lack thereof, of the so-called British elite is outstandingly bad. You can look at what they produced in terms of the prime ministers. These are, well, downright imbeciles, and I don't know why they repeat that. That's what they have left to repeat, about 500 square miles. There never was any 500 square miles. There was barely 150 square kilometers. But then again, they are mathematically, economically, geographically, intellectually challenged. Bojo himself has a degree in classics. I don't know. The guy probably has been high all his student life in Oxford or whatever the hell the degree mill he graduated. And so, yeah, you look at that and you look attentively at what United Kingdom looks like today. That's kind of, type of the people who it produces. And so he talks about and think what more they could have done and faster to turn the tables on Putin. Well, okay, yeah, sure, let them turn tables. If only we had not been dilatory with our help. Then ask yourself the corollary questions. How many Ukrainian lives and limbs could have been spared? I mean, yeah, as I already stated, get me any general staff officer from United Kingdom, they will not be able to answer basic questions on the modern warfare, and I will explain why. And we are kind of going to the culmination of this whole situation, which, of course, after reading this delirium of by Bojo, we need to get to what kind of constitutes a rather very interesting piece in August. And I was going to kind of, write about more, but and again, I also wrote about this in my book, albeit the book came out much earlier. But basically, Milley continues to press with this whole idea of the, well, what can I say, general stuff, if you wish. And he makes a critical admission, and but you have to understand now. Modern warfare is primarily engineering and a lot of math and physics. Mr. Milley never studied them. He has degree. in politics. He went through ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Course, where they study all kinds of the general things which you can find anywhere, around internet. And well, yeah, if you taught the history as it is being taught in the United States, the warfare history, it's basically, it's a fraud, academic fraud. But he doesn't have that toolkit, as most of the American top brass doesn't, except for people who go out of the U.S. Even there, you already saw yourself, I demonstrated to you last time what kind of the tests they are failing, to name some top brass officers. That's the test, and they still cannot pass it. And so when you look attentively at the service academies there, yeah, the academic level is extremely low, and so then you don't have the toolkit. You do not understand war as it was, designed, so to speak, if you wish. From the outset, even during the ancient Greece and the Romans, it was all mathematics. Now you're talking about the serious engineering courses. You need to understand how it all works. Mr. Milley doesn't have it. He went through ROTC, he went through the US Army War College, whatever, listening all those stories, and basically trying to memorize all those, operational and strategic documents, which is not enough. Anybody can do this with the IQ slightly above the room temperature. What you cannot do, you cannot understand the real operational art. You cannot understand real history, and you cannot understand physical and mathematical principles on which modern armies operate. Yet here we have, paradoxically, while making this admission, in the foreign affairs, this is the rag which produced by those morons, globalist morons. So he talks about this, published on August 5, it's almost, months and a half ago, that America isn't ready for the wars of the future. Well, I have news. America hasn't been ready for them since 30 years. And they are already here. He talks about, so it's Mark Milley, Eric Schmidt, and, it's a September-October issue of the Foreign Affairs. But look at this. On the battlefields of Ukraine, the future voice quickly becoming its present. Thousands of drones fill the skies. These drones and their operators are using artificial intelligence. Full stop here immediately. There is no such thing as artificial intelligence, and this is what you have to explain to these people who never took the course in the, for example, as we have been forced, with all those algorithms, with the combat information control systems. We studied Fortran, and it's already there was algorithms. Now we have neural networks, but it's not artificial intelligence. Algorithms are not artificial intelligence, but they continue to repeat this garbage produced by the corporate United States to sell all kind of stupid, useless, iPad, iPhone, whatever. It's artificial intelligence. It is not. But still, so to avoid obstacles and identify potential targets, yes, this is called algorithms. AI models are also helping Ukraine predict where to strike, thanks to these systems. No, it's not AI models, it's all garbage. What is allows them to predict where to strike is the ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance apparatus of the United States primarily, which works 24/7 to provide targeting. And that's what it is. And so, again, they use algorithms, but this is pathetic, really, for the guy who evidently, he saw tanks. He commanded some division in whatever, killing some kind of the toilet armed force, So, but there we go. Thanks to the systems, Ukrainian soldiers are taking out tanks and downing planes with devastating effectiveness. No, I didn't notice devastating effectiveness. Russians obviously sustained some losses, no doubt about it. But again, the kill ratio is horrendous and in favor of Russia. But what can I say? Milley has to know better, right? No, he's a propagandist, nothing more. As most of them, like Petraeus, Kim, as I already stated, those people will not pass not only their entrance exams to the Academy of the General Staff, forget about it. They will not pass entrances into the service academies or war colleges in Russia. They simply do not have academic background to get in there. And so there you go. Russians units find themselves under constant observations, and their communications lines are prone to enemy disruptions. Well, yeah, they are constant observation. Exactly. It is done by the United States ISR, which hides behind the backs of the Ukrainian cannon fodder, because obviously Russians can take out all those satellites and shoot down all those recon and patrol aircraft easily. But it means, obviously, as you can understand, casus belli. Russians may yet do it. But then, of course, Milley contends, that he admits, as I already stated, he admits that United States is not ready. And United States is not ready on the several, so to speak, sectors of this whole situation to fight any meaningful war, because they never could, really. So, and here it is. If it wants to remain the preeminent global power, well, United States will remain the global power, I'm pretty sure. But it's not going to be preeminent, because obviously it doesn't know what real continental warfare is. Anybody from the strategist in the United States who comes out from all those, war colleges, or who knows what other the academic institutions that says that United States is continental power, it's BS. It never was. So, and I mean, you cannot explain to those people how continental power, what continental power is, and how it is shaped by the warfare. Well, United States warfare was primarily about, starting the, rockers with the Canadians, or at that time British. They went in, burned the White House in 1814 together with the rest of the Washington, D.C., I believe. So, and that's about it. To the north, United States has mighty Canada, and to the south, it's mighty Mexico. So, it's even ridiculous when they pretend that they want to become the continental power. United States never fought, not a single American general, officer, serviceman ever fought defending United States proper. Period. It's just simple as that. So, but the United States will have to quickly shift course. No, it cannot. But the country needs to reform the structure of its armed forces. Well, I agree with that. The US military needs to reform its tactics and leadership development. Well, it needs new ways to procure equipment. It needs to buy new types of gear. And it needs to better train soldiers to operate drones and use AI. Well, the last phrase you can simply discard, because it's pure propaganda BS. But the problem is that you cannot do this in the United States. And that's what is the point of my whole, second decade in activity, so to speak, when I write about the fact that war is always necessarily a cultural act. It always is, always was, always will be. United States doesn't have culture of continental warfare. It was always expeditionary force, and it will remain such no matter what they try to do. Apart from the fact that, of course, United States now doesn't have resources to do so. It may yet get it, who knows, sometime in the future. But the point is that people ask me, oh yeah, United States has like $1 trillion of whatever expenses, and how could they lose their arms race? Easily, because those are $1 trillion, if you are actually reduce it to the proper scale of the correlation of forces. That means United States not even in the same league technologically as Russia. And as I already stated, so Russians also sustain losses. Russians get liquor here and there. But the problem is United States Army cannot fight the real war of the scale of special military operation, or of the scale which it will come down to if the United States and NATO wants to commit suicide by the cop, which is Russia, because that Russia has the full escalation dominance. NATO doesn't. They have a lot of propaganda, make no mistake. They just got new, something like 15,000 armed forces of Finland, and then about 20,000 armed forces of Sweden. Wow, what a might, So, and you have to understand, we're dealing here with the real military science, not this propaganda, which basically poisoned the whole American military thinking, which otherwise would have been an absolutely normal way, well, if to consider the fact that United States remains imperialist power, is to develop naval forces in appropriate way, not building these gigantic lumbering, fat targets known as the CVNs, which is the aircraft carriers, but But to build a proper, flexible distributed force, a real distributed force, not making, the lip syncing, so to speak, to it. But it's not going to happen because the United States, as already stated, lost the arms race. Even Milley admits it. He doesn't understand technological dimension of it. He's told basically from the briefings from the briefings from the people who actually do have engineering, military engineering background and understand physical issues related to the, for example, newest delivery systems, which United States doesn't even register with, well, Trident 2G5 and maybe Minuteman, which still kind of lives out the rest of its life. So, and it's just unbelievable. And the reason I needed to bring this up, because, yeah, the only thing which is left for them is like Hodges. How, well, like the Private Frost, in the Aliens too, when they demand for them to surrender their main firepower during the, the entrance into this facility. And he says, how are we going to fight then? With harsh language? This is what's left, only harsh language. That's the only thing, for example, Ben Hodges knows. And as I already stated, I'm not exaggerating. He wouldn't be allowed to even go in the command any brigade. He will not understand what you need to do, how you need to do, and how you have to integrate, which is Russian armed forces is the other work in progress. Mr. Gerasimov and General Staff, including main operational directorate with Mr. Rudskoy and all those people, and now Mr. Belousov in charge of the Ministry of Defense. Their main task is not just to win the war. The war is against NATO. Is to not allow to those nut jobs in Washington to go full bananas and kill us all. That's what is one of the main objectives. And secondly, Russians are building and shaping armed force which will simply have no equals in the world for the next 20, 30 years at least. This is what it is. And when you think also that you can change tactics, how about United States starts rerunning its operational manuals? Can it? I doubt so, because there is no actually TOE, Table of Organization Equipment, which is adequate for the war of 2024. To kill some Afghan, peasants, maybe repeat over 3.0 over Iraqi army, maybe. The rest, I'm sorry, there's no record even to indicate anything that is in some sense is being done in the armed forces of the United States, which essentially its ground forces have to remain small, compact expeditionary force. There you go. And this is what I wanted to tell you today. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me on the Patreon, pardon me, or buy me a coffee and two. I would really appreciate this. So guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.